Hello. Now we've reached over 100 of you, a few more people trickling in, which is great to see. I think we'll make a start. So good afternoon. It's lovely to see so many of you here today. And thank you for coming to this webinar and giving up some of your lunch hour or whatever hour it might be for you to talk about this professional development framework. Just to let you know that this is one in a series of 4 that will be running throughout the spring. This is an overview to start off with, and in each subsequent episode, if you like, we'll be going through different applications and parts of the framework so that we can get into the sort of nitty-gritty of it and look at the applications of it. So because of that, you will see on a lot of your slides at the bottom right, there is a blue rectangle with a QR code in it. And if you access that QR code, that will take you to a page where you can sign up for the others in this series. So you might want to do that. You can do it now, or don't worry if we move the screen on, because it will be in subsequent screens as well. Okay, I've got my lovely colleague Hannah in the background who's going to be moving slides for me. So Hannah, I wonder if you could move to the next one, please. Thank you very much. So first, a bit of housekeeping. So we have Hannah doing the slide moving, but also my colleague Justinia, who is the host, who will be posting things in the chat and any things that you might need to know, and she'll be on hand to answer any queries. You can get in touch with her in the chat. If you see at the bottom of your screen, there is a speech bubble icon, just a single speech bubble, that's the chat. So we'd encourage you to use that if you have any sort of technical queries. Also, there will be a lot of time for questions at the end of this, where myself and Mark will go through all of your queries about the framework, and we're very much encouraging questions. So if you would like to submit a question, please use the Q&A button, which is 2 speech icons. Okay, so we expect to go till 1 o'clock, and yes, hope we can answer some of your questions, the things you never knew you needed to ask about the framework. Okay, Hannah, can I have the next slide, please? Oh, sorry, and it's being recorded. It's being recorded, so we will get a version of this up on our website, linked to a YouTube video. So if you are worried that you're going to miss something important, don't worry, there will be a recording later. And also, if any of your colleagues have not been able to come along today, you can post them in the direction of the recording. Okay. So today we're really covering the basics about the framework, the question words, the who, what, why, where, how of the framework. It has been out for nearly a year now, but we are aware that because you are all very busy people, you all have a lot on your plates. This may be something that you haven't really had time to consider yet fully, or you've heard about it, but you haven't engaged with it. There are still some things that you want to know. So this is why we're starting today with the basics. My colleague Mark will be doing a demo of the interactive version of this. Hi, Mark. And we will also have a lot of time to answer your questions. And as I say, this is one of a series. So don't worry, there are more to come if you want to have a really deep dive into some of our content. I would say as well that your questions will help form a big FAQs document, which we will be building up as we go through this series. So we know where the difficulties are for you. That will help us, but also we can put it on our website. So any of those questions, you'll be able to see what the answers are. And also they will help us with considering what we need to put in the next 3 webinars as well. Okay, great. Thanks to you. Thank you. Hannah, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So I alluded to Mark just now. So Mark, do you want to say hello?
Sure. Thank you, Vicky. Hi, everyone. It's, as always, really nice to be here. And thank you so much to all of you for taking the time out to come and ask questions. And I don't want to speak to Vicky, but I think we're both really excited about this one. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I am very excited too. So we are the learning team at RCSLT, and this is very much something we're very proud of that we've worked with members to produce. So that's why I want to talk to you about it today. Okay, so I'm going to start off with some of the more sort of basic questions, and then I'm going to head over to Mark to look at the interactive version and any resources we already have that are linked in with that framework. So, fundamental, what is the framework? I'm going to start from the beginning. So it's basically a document. I don't know if this will work because I'm blurred, but you can see I've always got a document on my desk. This is the professional development framework, a lovely fetching colour of pink. It's basically a scaffold for you to map yourself in, to think about your team and how they map in, to think about where you are in your career journey. It's a scaffold. It was created in a period 2022 to 2023 with some funding from what was then NHS, well, is now NHS England. But be aware that the consultation process and working with members was across the UK. So it's very much Four Nations friendly. It was developed in a series of events with members, discussion events, working groups, and consultation periods. So we had a huge number of you contributing your valuable time to this. And so it's very much for the profession, by the profession. So basically it's a structure, as I said. You can use it to identify where you are now, but also to think about where you might want to be later. And you can use it in your short-term planning, like in your supervision sessions, in your one-to-ones, in HCPC audit. But you can use it longer term too, for example, in planning for where you want to go in your next role, to think about if you want to really sort of become quite a generalist or a specialist in a particular area. And also, I mean, we've heard of people who might want to use this kind of tool for even planning retirement or returning to practice. So it's as flexible as you want it to be, basically. So that's what it is, a document designed to scaffold for your career and for you, and if you are a manager, to think about your teams as well. The graphic on the left of the screen shows the particular areas of the framework. In the blue sort of arrows center, if you like, there are the core components: inclusion and diversity, sustainability, co-production, practitioner well-being, and impact. And in the framework, we identify what these all are, what they mean to someone in a speech and language therapy career. And we also have reflective questions for each of those areas to look at: what are you doing now? What might you do in the future? What might you not do? What you could stop doing in all of these areas. I want to point out as well that early on in the discussions we had with SLTs, we sort of fed in the idea, would you want anything about wellbeing to be in there? And the conversation at that stage was very much, no, we don't think it's for us. But as the conversations evolved over the year, it became clear that people did want it. They saw the benefit of having practitioner wellbeing in the framework. And we think this might be the only professional development framework that has that front and centre. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. And indeed, if others have that in their framework, that's fantastic, because it's so important for professionals to acknowledge and give space to that practitioner wellbeing. So that's in the centre. And we have questions, reflective questions about how you're doing in each of those areas. And then round the outside, I realise I'm pointing with my mouse, but you can't see that. Around the outside, we have the 4 domains of practice. Now, you might recognise that these are fairly similar in wording to the advanced practice categories, but these have been tweaked with the wording that speech and language therapists ask for. So you ask for these particular titles. So we've got facilitation of learning, evidence research and innovation, leadership and management, and professional practice. So in the document, we set out each of these in very, very great detail about what it means to be a good facilitator of learning, what it means to be good in your professional practice. And we also then give, you can give yourself a grading to how far along you think you are on each of these subcategories. Mark will go through that in a bit more detail later. So in summary, a scaffold looks at the core components of being a speech and language therapist and looks at the what you need to be a professional. Okay, Hannah, can I have the next slide, please? So why did we create it? Well, there are a number of reasons. I think top of the list probably is job satisfaction. We want to actively encourage people to be thinking about their speech and language therapy career, whether you want to specialise in a particular area or whether you become a really good all-rounder. Both of those are equally important, and you may find that depending on the kind of environment and area in which you work, that may set the pace. So, for example, if you're in a very rural area, you may find yourself being an advanced generalist because you're having to have many hats. Maybe if you're in a city, you may become a specialist. But that's really all up to you. So firstly, yes, job satisfaction. We didn't have a scaffold like this before. We do now, so that's really good. Obviously, it helps you to map where you are and where you want to be, and only you really know what that great career looks like for you, but this will help you to think about those, what that looks like. And it also gives you the space and the time to consider, and you might want to work with a colleague or a supervisor or a manager or someone outside of the profession to think carefully about what it is you want. As well, we also think it would be a useful tool for just recognizing the breadth and depth of things that SLTs do and give them a professional identity within their multidisciplinary team. I think that's really useful to have it codified. And I think it's also useful so multidisciplinary colleagues can see what you're working on. So if you're working in a service where your manager may be of a different profession, I think this is going to be really useful as well to show what speech and language therapy is all about. And indeed, it's also useful for people who might be thinking about speech and language therapy as a career. What does it involve? What kind of things could I do? Where could I go in my career? So there's many reasons why. I think fundamentally, it's to make sure that you, as speech and language therapists or as managers of speech and language therapists, know what are the possible routes that you could take and think about those careers that are right for you. Okay, Hannah, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. This is really important. Where is it? So I've put a QR code on the screen there for you to access the framework. It will take you to a page where you can find the framework document, which are the pink document that I've shown in the picture there. It will also take you to some guidance about what's in the different sections, and it will also take you to a link about the interactive version, which Mark is going to talk about in a bit. Okay, so that's me sort of giving the context. If I haven't covered anything that's fundamental, please do put it in the Q&A for our questions later. And now I'm going to hand over to Mark. And Hannah, can you move the slide, please? Thank you.
Perfect, thanks. Thank you, Vicky. I guess first of all, hello everyone. So in terms of like who it's for and how you use it, we wanted it to be for every speech and language therapist. So it's not limited by career stage or level or kind of any individual person's ultimate career goals or targets. It's for everyone. It's profession specific, so it is only for speech and language therapists, but within that overall category, it's for anyone. All we would caution is for students and NQPs, they've already got a lot going on in terms of working with frameworks. And we wouldn't want to risk framework fatigue. So for students and NQPs, while they are more than welcome to have a look at the framework, start considering it, using it to think about potential career goals or aspirations, we wouldn't necessarily encourage students and NQPs to properly go in on it just yet. Maybe wait until a couple of years in before that. But like I said, outside of that, it is for anyone. And in terms of how you use it, again, we've tried to make it very open, very flexible, so that people can use it in a way that works for them. So you can use just the kind of the reflective questions. If all you want to do is at various periods, just sit back, have a think, grab that space that Vicky mentioned earlier, and consider where you are and where you want to be, if that's how you want to use the framework. You can just use the kind of the self-scoring questions. And again, as Vicky said, I'll be showing you the interactive version and taking you through the rating system. But again, you can just use that if all you want to do is every so often rate yourself and kind of see where you're improving and maybe areas where you still want to make some improvements. Or you can do a mixture of the both. It is, like I said, entirely up to you how you use it, when you use it. And that was kind of by design, but like I said, we wanted to make it as open as possible, as flexible as possible, to make it as useful and as relevant as possible to as many people as possible. I've said as possible so much in the last maybe 10 seconds. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to have the next slide, please, Hannah. Marvelous, thank you. So like both Vicky and I have said on now multiple occasions, we do also now have an interactive version. And the interactive version is the self-scoring rating questions. It just allows you to do it online, so you can download. Vicky's shown you the PDF, the paper copy, and that has all the information you need and has the self-scoring questions on it. But the interactive version just allows you to fill that in online. I've included a couple of images here to show it has charts and graphs that you can print out or screenshot and save in a folder somewhere. And that means you can kind of look back. We kind of think a year, 2, 3 years down the line, you might be able to track the improvements you've made over the preceding year or 2 years or however long it's been. And again, the interactive version has been designed to be quite flexible. So you can access just one of the sections, you can access all of them, you can access a specific part of a section if that's all you want to do. Like I said, we've tried to make it open and flexible. And if I could have the next slide, please, Hannah. Thank you. And we also, and these are a very new resource, which we're very excited about. We've released some new professional development scenarios, and they cover a very broad range of subjects, because again, they're designed for anyone who's a speech and language therapist. I'm just going to have a very quick sip of water. And the reason we're so excited about them is that they are mapped against the professional development framework and have then been arranged by the domain of practice. So if, for example, you've gone through one of the domains and identified a couple of areas that you want to focus on in your CPD, you can then go to the scenarios, find that particular domain and even specific subsections of that domain, and see what professional development scenarios are available that fit into that domain, which should help with some of that CPD work and requirements. And if I could have the next slide, please, Hannah. Before we move into this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share. And I'm just going to show you, where the professional development framework lives. I know Vicky's included that QR code, but just so everyone knows where we're at. And I'll also show you a few resources that we have, like the professional development scenarios, and also how you can access, our e-learning and the other CPD we offer. So I'm hoping everyone can see my screen. I can only see Vicky's face. So Vicky, if you could let me know if it's showing up, awesome. Thank you. So I'm on the RCSLT website. I am logged in, but from the homepage, to get to the framework, just hover over the Learning in Your Career section, and the Professional Development Framework is right here. And yeah, you can access the PDF from this link here if you want to kind of have a paper copy and go through it. there is information on the 4 domains of practice and the 5 core components. So it's kind of easier for you to find the information you need if you want to just quickly check what are the 4 domains or check up on one of the 5 core components. The interactive framework is here, and I will in a moment show you how those work. And then also here's where the interactive, professional development scenarios are. So you can access them directly from the framework. I've realized because I've got the, oh, that's annoying. Just going to close that then. So yeah, this is the interactive version of the framework. Like I said, you can either access the whole thing or there are options to access just specific parts of it. But it looks something like this. And I'll show you the ratings. So these are the ratings. So for each of these statements, you rate where you believe yourself to be from foundation. So you're informed, but maybe that's the extent of your knowledge on it, all the way up to expert. So, you cover all of these and you consider yourself to have a great deal of expertise in that particular statement or area or subject. And there is also a not applicable now option. So it might be that some of the statements refer to things that you're not actively focused on at the moment and are not intending to focus on just yet. And again, that's absolutely fine. The framework's designed for you to be able to reflect the things you want to improve in, not necessarily everything. So just close that down again. So yeah, like I said, what you do, you just go through, you read each statement, and you rate yourself. I'm not going to actually read through these. I wouldn't recommend going through it this quickly. But yeah, you go through, you rate yourself. And then at the end of each subsection, it will give you a small pie chart, which you can screenshot if you want to. There's no obligation to at this stage because there is a whole screen at the end. And you can just progress through it that way. And probably what I should have done is progressed through this before the webinar. So now I'm going to try and speak while also going through the framework. But I'm seeing a few questions coming up in the Q&A. Vicky, are there any that I can answer live while I'm clicking through?
That's very brave of you, Mark, but I'm actually keeping an eye on it, and there is some really great questions coming in. A lot of them I've said I'll answer live at the end of this, but there are 2 that relate to what you're doing now. Actually, if you can focus on this as well.
Yeah, hit me with it.
Yeah. Does the interactive framework save what you input, or will you need to screenshot every time? That's from Megan. I wonder if you can talk about that.
It doesn't, no. To be perfectly honest, when we were developing it, we got a lot of feedback to suggest that people didn't want their results stored somewhere. This is a very personal thing. And so it doesn't save it anywhere, which means only you have access to the results and anyone you choose to share those results with. But I've got through the first kind of full section. And so you get a bar chart which shows you overall across that section how are you rating yourself. And you can either use the print this button, which will open a dialog box, which apparently doesn't want to load. There it is. Or like I said, you can just screenshot this instead if that's easier. So there's the bar chart there, and then there's all of the pie charts from across the section, in one easy to access place. And that's also available. If you're not a fan of pie charts, it is available as just a numerical table instead. But again, you can print that out if you'd like to. And sorry, we've just gone on to the next section now. But yeah, that's the interactive version. I'm going to stop sharing. So Hannah, if you want to jump back in on the slides. And while that happens, there's an awful lot in the Q&A. So Vicky, shall we dive into the Q&A now?
Yeah, indeed. Do you want to introduce the idea of Ask Us Anything, first of all? Although I think people have already got the idea of it.
Yeah, um, I rather fear the clue. The clue is in the name, but it's honestly it's a chance to ask anything. So if you're completely new to the framework and you've got basic questions, ask away. If you've been using it for a while and there's kind of more in-depth or specific questions you've got, again, ask away. This is, it is your opportunity to ask us anything about the framework.
Great, thank you, Mark. Yes, so let's dive into the questions. We did have some questions that have previously been sent in as part of the registration process. So we may get to those. We've got just over half an hour. We may not, because I'm so pleased to see how many questions there are. That's really good. But rest assured, any we don't get to today, we will consider and put an answer to and put it into an FAQs, which will go out with the recording. So if we don't get to you today, apologies, but we won't be forgetting you, and we'll send that FAQs out to everyone who's attended today as well. So I think if we concentrate first on some of the ones we're getting in live, and thank you for sending all those in. I'm going to go consecutively, really. And Mark, I'll come to you for some of these as well. But the first one is from Rachel. A really good question. Can this be used for SLT assistance? I would say there's nothing to stop you. I think it might be really useful to have a look. But what I would say is there is a support worker hub on the RCSLT website that is really thorough, has been developed with support workers and SLTs. It includes a link to a new support worker framework, and that is probably your best bet. There's nothing to stop you looking at the professional development framework, but I would recommend you probably need to be guided by the support worker framework. I don't know, Mark, if you can sort of dig out a link for that, please, and put it in the chat, if that would be all right.
I should be able to, yes. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So we'll try to get that to everyone in a bit, but really good question. The next one is from Carmel, who says, how does the framework account for clinicians whose roles have become leadership and management? Again, really good question. Never been asked this before, but I think it's designed to be really flexible. So if you cast your mind back to the graphic, there is a section on leadership and management. And so if you moved away from that more clinical role into leadership and management, I would expect you to be sort of being advanced or expert on some of those subtopics within leadership and management. So it is entirely flexible for you to sort of just, and you can concentrate mostly on that area if you've moved away from other areas, for example. So it should still support you. Okay, hopefully that's answered your question. If you want to follow up with any sort of specifics, I'm happy to look at that. I'm just going to click that's done. Greta asks, does the framework help in identifying when SLTs are ready to move up to the next band, e.g. band 5 to band 6? We often have difficulty in objectively identifying when an SLT is ready to step up, so to speak, when they were in a developmental post, like a band 5 to 6 developmental post. Again, I love these kind of sessions because they're things we've never been asked before. So it causes us to think. And luckily, I've been thinking about this while Mark was speaking. And that interactive version should really help, because I think if someone is answering that in a lot of areas they've completed the foundation and enhanced the foundation level, I think that then that would be a good signifier that they are ready to go on to a band 6 role. I would be really interested if anyone's done this already and used it as a guide to when people are ready to transition. And please get in touch with me or Mark if you have, because we're looking for live cases of how this is being used. But yes, I would recommend that if you're getting a lot of, what would be the colour, Mark? I've forgotten what the colour would be.
I guess
proficient and foundation.
Yeah. So foundation is pink, and then it moves into proficient, which is a nice light blue.
Okay, thank you. So if you're getting a lot of pink and light blue, it's an indicator that, you know, you've gone through the sort of basics, you're proficient, you're probably ready to move on to the more enhanced level. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to look at, oh, there's so many questions. I don't know if there's any, Mark, that you want to pick off from the list.
Yeah, there's a couple to do with the interactive framework up next, so I might jump on those because I can answer them at the same time, really. So anonymous attendee asks, does any work completed on the framework link to the RCSLT CPD diary? There is no direct automatic link. You are, of course, more than welcome to save screenshots on a CPD activity in your diary, but there's no automated way of making that happen. But yeah, you can track through the diary if you'd like to. I hope that answers the question. And then Megan asks, does the interactive framework save what you input, or will you need to screenshot every time? And like I said, when I was demoing, it won't automatically save your responses between sessions. So if you want to keep a record of your kind of results or output, you will need to screenshot or print the results. Like I said, a lot of people during the testing phase were uncomfortable with their private reflections and kind of private ratings being stored somewhere and therefore potentially accessible even by, you know, just Vicky or I. So I kind of steered away from that, to be honest. And again, I hope that answers the question. And then from Laura, are the levels, foundation, etc., subjective, or is there guidance on what would make you proficient, enhanced, etc.? I guess to an extent, anything like this is going to be a little subjective, in that one person's foundation could be another person's proficient, something like that. I think what's most important is that you, as an individual, while completing it, hold yourself to the same standards throughout. So you don't start off being very strict on what makes you proficient and then becoming somewhat lax about it later. We do have a lot of plans to release, you know, resources, further resources, helping people understand the framework more, kind of giving people more of an idea of how others are using it. And that is the sort of thing we could include in that kind of some very rough guidance potentially on what we see proficient as being versus enhanced versus foundation. But like I said, I think as long as people are consistent internally, that should be fine. And again, I hope that answered the question. Like Vicky said, do send follow-ups if there's anything that's still unclear there.
Thank you, Mark. I would just like to add, we do have, so page 18 and 19 of the framework, a sort of guide to those levels. So, for example, foundation is I am informed, proficient is I am knowledgeable and skilled, enhanced is I have enhanced knowledge and skills, advanced is I have advanced knowledge and skills, and expert is I have expertise. And these were adapted from work originally proposed by Dreyfus and Dreyfus in 1980, and then worked into health and care by Benner in 1982. And there's a little bit more around that sort of evidence for why we've used these terms, but they also do fit into then the enhanced practice and advanced practice work that's going on at NHS England as well. But yeah, do feel free to ask if there's more that you need to know. I'm going to say that's done. Okay. Taz asks, did you consult with other AHP professions or compare to what development frameworks they have? We did. We looked very extensively at other frameworks that are around from different professions. We even looked at frameworks from overseas, speech and language therapy, for example. And we brought those to the many workshops we had with SLTs at the time and asked people what they thought of them and what elements would apply to SLT and what wouldn't. So we did extensive research on that. So I hope that helps. It was also useful that at the time a lot of other professional development frameworks were being made by other professions, and I do link in with those people doing a similar job to me in other professions. So we make sure we talk to each other as well. So you can be rest assured that's all been done. Okay, Eleanor asks a question about which elements of the full framework are available in the interactive version. Do you want to go for that, Mark?
Sure, yeah. So in the interactive version, it is just the ratings questions. So if you want the reflective questions, those are in the full framework document, or there is a separate document on the RCSLT website, like on the framework pages, that just has the reflective questions. But yes, the interactive version is just the self-scoring, like the ratings sections, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Mark. And I should add as well that there is a section 3, if you like. So there's the reflective questions for the core components, and then there are the 4 domains of practice, which have those that interactive tool. But there's also a third section, which is about thinking about your career in a different way, sort of taking a paradigm shift to how you think about your career and career progression. And that is something we'll be covering in the final webinar, and I forget the exact date, so I'm hoping that Justinia will be able to put something in the chat about that. I've got a feeling it's in May, but I'm sure colleagues will know better than me. Anyway, that final webinar will be more about the last section of the framework, which is about thinking about your career in a different way. So I hope between us we've been able to answer your question, Eleanor. Okay, what's next? Should we be encouraging all of our SLT team to use this as part of CPD? I think you know what we're going to say, which is a resounding yes. Yes, please. That would be fantastic. And if anyone's already doing this, we would love to hear from you, because as we progress this series of webinars, we really want to be able to use real life examples where teams are using it. So if you're on this call today and your team is already using it in some capacity, please get in touch, because if you'd be interested in being part of a webinar, we'd love to hear from you. And we'd love to hear from you anyway, because we want to know how this is being used. So yes, please. And if you want any help with how to do that, please just get in touch with me or Mark. I'm very happy to help. Great, thank you, Paula. That's a very brave question, but I'm so pleased you asked it. Does the framework provide resource ideas to go away and develop your skills? Asks Grace. I wonder, Mark, if I'm going to pass that to you, because you've already talked about some resources.
Sure, yeah. I guess the framework in and of itself doesn't, simply because the potential range of resources that would be relevant is quite honestly huge. So obviously there's a whole wealth of resources on the RCSLT website, which may be applicable depending on what your CPD requirements are. But I guess my answer is no, not as such. But there are resources available around the on the website around the framework. Again, I hope that answers the question. I'm aware it was maybe a little woolly and vague. But I think
that's great.
It does also kind of link into the next question from Kate, which was, can the interactive framework direct you towards the learning resources that could help improve knowledge in an area that you'd like to focus on? I guess my previous answer kind of semi-covers that as well. Development-wise, I think it would be nice to start providing a few links to kind of resource areas. But again, the potential link, we don't want the list of links to be, pages and pages and pages, because then that's not useful either. But I think in time, what we're aiming to develop is kind of, if you want to work on one of the domains, here's some overall general resources. So it won't be specific, but it will give you kind of, I guess, an introduction, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you, Mark. And also to say that as we go forwards, when we're creating new resources like the scenarios, we are actively mapping into the framework. And so when, for example, new guidance is created, we're also making sure that there is a point in the process for making that guidance where the writers, the authors consider how it links in with the framework. When we're going to be making new e-learning, for example, we're also going to be thinking about mapping in so that you can see if you attend this thing or do this thing or are proficient in a particular sort of competency, that it ticks against a particular box. So it's more sort of in the opposite direction from the resource to the framework, so you can see where you've mapped, rather than, as Mark said, it would be impossible to put all the resources that would be relatable to this into the framework. It would be unmanageable, but we can do it the opposite way. So I hope that helps. Okay, so that's answered Kate's question. Joe asks, can the framework be used as part of a PADR or appraisal process, or would this be for personal use only? The answer is yes, it can, because if it's any kind of opportunity where you have to think about your career and your learning and development, where you are, where you want to be, how do you need to get there, this is an ideal tool to start with. So anything like that, one-to-ones as well, or even as part of a wider team, thinking about your team skills for, say, the next year ahead, and what does the team need to develop. This is the ideal tool to use for that. So a resounding yes, Joe. Thank you. Mark, that's done. I'm so pleased we're still getting so many questions. So we haven't even gone to our ready-made questions yet. Okay, Mark, how do you screenshot on a computer is a great question. I wonder, is it possible to show that now? Can we take back control of the screen?
Yes, I think so. Hannah, I'm going to boot you off screen sharing for a second. I'm really sorry about that. I'll just share my screen, but there we go. So the easiest way, and certainly the way I do it most often, is I have the snipping tool saved on my taskbar. You can find it by searching snipping tool in the search bar here, and it opens up a little window. You click new, and then just click and drag what you'd like to screenshot, and then from there you can. I can't access it because I've got the toolbar in the way now. But you can copy that, you can save it, kind of whatever you want to do with it from there. And that's by far and away the easiest way. It also lets you can see my cursor's changed to a little.
Sorry, Mark, we can't see your tools. Right, I can't.
What can't you see? The
we can just see the facilitation of learning, but we can't see what you've been doing.
Oh no! Oh,
I know,
hold on.
sorry.
That's okay. Let me screen share again, and I'll do my whole screen. That way, you should be able to see it all. So yes, it's the snipping tool that I use. So you can search in here for it. I've got it saved on my toolbar because it just makes life easier. But you just click and drag, like that. I hope that makes sense to everyone. Cool.
Thank you,
and
Mark.
then you can save it, you can copy it, you can send it directly to someone, and you can highlight / annotate what you've snipped. So if you wanted to kind of draw attention to something, you can highlight. That was an awful highlight. Please don't highlight in that way. But yeah, that's probably, for me, that's the easiest way of doing things. And Hannah, as advance warning, I'm going to stop sharing. If you want to pop the slides back up. Thank you.
And Eleanor asks, if you're using Windows, you can screenshot by pressing Windows Shift S. I guess that's more
there
of
you go. Yeah.
a tip for everyone. Thank you, Eleanor, for that tip. I didn't know that, so that's really useful. Thank you. Okay, what's next? Eleanor asks, would the idea be that you complete the framework first and then set some goals in the CPD diary? How are they meant to work together? Yes, that's really it. So the framework is for those sort of broader conversations where you think about what you need to do, and then you would go away and think about how you're going to achieve those aims, and that would be the point of putting a goal into the diary. Anything to add to that, Mark?
No, not really. I mean, that's a way it can be used. We like I said, it's a very open, very flexible structure. So if you don't want to do it in that way, you're not obliged to. But yeah, I see a lot of sense in the approach of completing the framework, getting some idea of where you want to aim, and then creating some goals on the CPD diary to work towards from there.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, on to Leslie now. Why can't the interactive version be saved in a similar way to the CPD log, requiring a login? I think, Mark, you've sort of covered that a bit, but I wonder if you can expand on that, please.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to be completely open and honest, creating something similar to the CPD diary was beyond our budget, because that then requires, an entire website to be created that provides a login, and that would have been incredibly expensive, to be perfectly honest. And this way, it's something you can access very quickly, very rapidly, and do with the information what you want, what you see fit. If you want to save it on CPD diary, you're more than welcome to, but you're not obliged to. If you would prefer to save it in like kind of a folder on your own kind of personal laptop, desktop, equally you can do it that way instead. It does, I guess, provide a bit more flexibility in that manner. But again, I hope that's answered it, and I'm more than happy to talk you through further if you'd like to.
Great, thank you, Mark. Mari asks, does facilitation of learning refer to supporting other SLTs and myself, or does it also refer to educating and supporting service users and their families and schools, etc.? That's a really good question. It is really about other SLTs and being a supervisor or a practice educator. I am looking at it to see whether it's anything about it. No, actually, it's a good question, because there is one sub-component that says act as a resource for individual practitioners, service users, teams, and organizations. So while it's mostly about that sort of being a good educator for the profession, for students, for supervision, for coaching and so forth, and for your teams, there is also one subcomponent that does talk about service users as well. So it's a small but significant piece. So yeah, thank you for asking that question, because I don't think I'd really sort of thought that through so extensively. Hope that helps. It doesn't say anything about schools, but it does say outside my setting. So maybe it could relate to that. Okay, thank you. Anonymous attendee asks, are there any explicit links in the framework with qualifications or training, such as masters, enhanced clinical practice, advanced clinical practice, and CPD training? No, there aren't. I did mention that the sort of enhanced and advanced categories you might mark yourself against broadly relate to the enhanced and advanced levels in as you progress through your career. And indeed, we do plan to do some work on enhanced and advanced schemas this year. And I'm working very closely with the person who's creating those with universities and SLTs. And so we'll be making sure that that work maps into this framework as well. So there's a lot of cross-working to make anything new that we're developing fit the framework, but there's not explicit links. We're just making sure they align. I hope that answers the question. Oh my goodness, we've only got 10 minutes left and we've still got so many questions, which is really exciting. Okay, anything you want to take, Mark?
I was actually, because there's people offering some very helpful tips for screenshotting. So I was going to run through those so that everyone knows them, and then I was going to kind of move them out. But Laura, thank you for saying this, because you're right, and I meant to mention it and completely forgot. When I print a document, I can choose to print it as a PDF, which is a helpful way to save documents from the screen. Yes, so when you click print this and the print window comes up, where you choose which printer to send it to, one of the options is save as PDF. So that means instead of having to print it, you can just save it as a PDF to wherever you'd like, whether that's kind of, your desktop, a folder somewhere. So thank you for pointing that out, Laura. That's a really useful tip. Vanessa has said, I use the print screen button, then Control C to capture the page, then Control V to paste it. So again, thank you, Vanessa. And Johan says, on Mac computers, one can screenshot a page using the Command and Shift and number 3 keys. So thank you, Johan. I'm not a Mac user, so I never know how to screenshot on Macs. So that's really useful. Thank you. I think, sorry, Vicky, I'm just making sure I've grabbed all of those.
Yeah. There's one from Vanessa as well. Oh, you've
yeah,
done that.
just got
Okay.
that.
Okay, great.
But thank you everyone for sending those tips in. It's really useful for people. So thank you.
Yeah, it is really useful because sometimes we don't know what you don't know, so it's always really handy for us to hear about those practical things. Oh, and Laura's just come in with, in Mac, Command plus Shift plus 4 means you can select the area to screenshot. So thank you for that tip, Laura. Okay, what have we got left? And I will need to leave a few minutes for the evaluations and just to say goodbye, really. So we might get through all of these, we might not. I'll see how it goes. So Kim says, is this framework something that could be used at an appraisal to identify learning needs, or is it more of a personal reflection? I think we've already had a question about appraisal, but yes, it's both, really. You can use it, you can sit down with a cup of coffee and go through the paper version or the online version and think about things on a personal level, maybe before an appraisal, or you could use it in the appraisal with your line manager or a supervisor, or you could use it with your team. You use it how you want, but it is a great scaffold for those kind of discussions. And you can also use it as a team as well. We do know of some teams that are using it. We also know that it's being used at some events where people are using the reflective questions around the core components to think about how they might do things better from a well-being perspective. So it's as flexible as you like, so you can use it for both. Okay, Megan asks, if used during supervision, should supervisors also complete a copy based on the supervisee for comparison and discussion, especially where there may be discrepancies in scoring, or should it ever only be completed by the supervisee subjectively about themselves? That's really interesting. No one's asked us about that before. I think that would make an interesting discussion, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's almost like a sort of 360-degree view of your skills and what other people see that you're doing. I don't know, what do you think, Mark?
I'd agree. Yeah, I don't think. Again, I know I'm banging this flexible drum very hard, and maybe I need to stop. But we wouldn't say you either should or should not do that, because obviously it would depend on the individual relationship between supervisor and supervisee. But I can see it being really useful for the supervisee in terms of if they've either got any blind spots where their skills are concerned, or, and this is very often the case, the supervisee might be quite harsh on themselves. And the supervisor might be able to say, you know what, actually, I don't think your foundation there. These are my reasons. So yeah, I think it's a really nice idea. But like I said, we aren't kind of obliging a particular method of use. But I do like that as an idea very much.
Great, thank you, Megan. And also, I did go to an event in Wales to talk about this, the Wales Hub, and there was one table talking about this as maybe you all sort of sit down as a team and map yourselves, and then at the end of it have a discussion about what you think about whether that the person who's given themselves a particular score, whether you think that's actually fair, because you may find that some people score themselves down, whereas you see them as being really solid and skilled in a particular area, but because of, I guess, imposter syndrome and things like that, people may score themselves lower than their colleagues actually see them. So that would be a really interesting thing to do as well as a team. We have still a few more questions. I do think that probably we're not going to have time to answer all of them. So what we're going to have to do is take all of the remaining questions, take the questions that you've also put into the pre-registration. And as I said at the start, we are going to make sure that they're all covered in an FAQs, and then send that out to you all. I may just have quickly time for F. Miller, who says, as a return to practice, does this align with HCPC and NHS pillars? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that question, but what I can say is it does work as for return to practice, because it's looking at, again, where you are now, where you want to be, what kind of development you might want to do to come back into the workplace. Have things changed, say in terms of evidence-based practice? Have things changed in terms of digital and so forth? And where do you think you need to develop more? So if there's any sort of follow-up to that, F. Miller, please get in touch if you want to ask some further questions. We do have an inquiries team that is really hot on return to practice support. So I'm afraid we're not going to get time to finish all of these, because I do have to now go on to the evaluation form, and I apologise for having to round up there. These are questions that we didn't get round to, but we rest assured we know what we're going to say for those, and we'll share them in the FAQs. Yes, thank you, Hannah. So if we can have the evaluation form, please. Great, thanks. So if you click on this QR code, it will take you to the evaluation. This is really important in terms of, we want to always make sure that our webinars are improving, whether that's in terms of the way we present or the way it's delivered technically. We want to make sure that we're continually improving, like you do in your practice. So really value your help here. So just going to give a couple of minutes for that. Is there anything in the chat that still needs to be covered? No? Okay, so I'm just going to say, remember the QR code for the continuing series. It will be going on until, I don't know if my colleagues have said what the last date is, but I believe it's in May. So there's one in March, one in April, and one in May. Do click on that link to find out more and sign up. The next one is going to be about the core components. The one after that is going to be a deep dive into the 4 domains of practice. And the one after that, as I said, is going to be about looking at your career in a sort of different way with a different lens. And I think that will be quite a fascinating discussion. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to scan that code, and hopefully you're going to join us for other webinars where we hope to have other members of our RCSLT members joining us to talk more deeply about other aspects of the framework. But otherwise, we're going to thank you so much for taking part. Thank you so much for your time today. Do look out for the recording and the FAQs, and thank you, and have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.